Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Drew. If it's your first time here, big welcome. In this channel, we are learning all about functional anatomy, which means how the body kind of works. And we're looking at the musculoskeletal system. So when muscles contract, how does it create movement? And to do that, we basically look at each individual muscle on its own and appreciate what they do on their own when they contract. And then once you've got that appreciation, then you start looking at them in combined movement. So when muscle A and muscle B contract together, how do they work in pairs, or what we call co-contractions? And you start to get a deeper understanding of movement. But to start with, it helps to kind of like just individually look at each muscle and get an appreciation of what they do. I call that zooming in, and then you zoom out and you put into the greater context and overall picture of movement. And in this video, we're looking at one of my favorite muscles. This is Serratus Anterior, perhaps the most overlooked, underrated muscle in the upper body, particular for shoulder health and scapular stability. It is absolutely critical. It's hard to appreciate because you can't see it. You can't really palpate it because it's underneath the pecs, it's underneath the lats. You can get these kind of lower fibers here popping out. If you look at some photos of Bruce Lee, for example, you'll see his serratus anterior kind of development on his side of his ribs. So really kind of lean gymnasts, martial artists, sometimes yoga people, anyone really in health and fitness, but they typically need to be quite lean and very well conditioned to pop it out. So you won't see it on my body. But I have done a lot of work in training this muscle group to enhance my shoulder function. And since I kind of changed focus on to this muscle group, my shoulders have really come forward in just terms of healthy functional movement in the shoulder. I can kind of do all movements, do them well, full range. And a big part of that is, introducing specific serratus anterior exercises into my routine. So let's have a look at this amazing muscle. As always, we're using 3D for anatomy, which is a great app. Complete Anatomy is often what you'll find on the App Store. There'll be a link in the YouTube comments notes below, so you can jump on there. I don't have any affiliation with Complete Anatomy. I just think it's an excellent learning tool. There's a couple other ones out in the market as well, which I do use 2 other anatomy kind of based tools when I'm teaching. So we might do some videos on them in the future as well. Particularly another one called the Posture app is really good because it looks more movement based stuff. So when we move into looking at movement and muscles interacting in movement, we'll probably go switch to that app because this app, Complete Anatomy, doesn't do that very well yet. Hopefully they will work on that in the future. So as always, we are looking at origin and insertion. So if we just click on the muscle here, if you're using the app at home, you come over to the left-hand column here, we have information. You click on information, it'll give you a quick rundown on serratus anterior. So I highly recommend you can just read through that on your own. But the key thing here, we want to look at origin, external surface of the 1st to 9th rib. So external surface of the 1st to 9th rib. So we look at it here. So rib 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so 9 ribs. And then you've got the last 2 floating ribs down here, or last 3 floating ribs down there. So that's clearly going to be on both sides. And then we look at what have we done? Where did you go? Hello, location, key features. Happens to me all the time. If you click off the actual thing you're looking at, it goes to different information. One day I'll learn. Insertion is then the medial border of the scapula. So yeah, this is the medial border of the scapula, but from the inside. So if we can kind of maybe isolate, let's see if we can do that. So you can see this is the medial border of the scapula. And it's going to basically have attachments kind of on the inside of the shoulder blade, but mainly it's right on the edge there. Get back. Let's see if we can go hide. No, fade. No, hide others. No, fade others. Yeah, so you can see here, this is the shoulder blade, the scapula, and it's right on the anterior surface of the shoulder blade, which sits on your rib cage. So it's between your ribs and the scapula. So there's actually muscle that sits between the shoulder blade and the scapula. So the actual shoulder blade itself has only one bony articulation to the skeleton, which is the sternoclavicular joint here, the SC joint. Everything else for your shoulder blade is muscular. So your shoulder itself, the scapula and the humerus are really reliant on all the muscles surrounding the shoulder blade to kind of keep it in position and give it stability. So that's often what we call scapular stability. And so the muscles we're looking at there particularly are going to be things like the serratus anterior, your rhomboids, your middle trap, your lower trapezius, upper traps, lats, particularly. These are all muscles that are basically keeps the shoulder blade in the right position with movement. And serratus anterior is a really, really important part of that. So let's have a look at the motion. And the primary thing this muscle does is protraction. Okay, often kind of referred to as the punching muscle. So when you punch forward, good. So it's going to help bring the shoulder into flexion and then protraction. So it's going to pull on this medial border, and so it's going to roll the shoulder forward. So it's going to curve around the rib cage, is what we want. So when you do kind of like we call scap shrugs, imagine you're on your hands and knees in horse stance or 4-point kneeling. You can do it with your fingers forward, you can do it with your hands out, lock your elbows, and you're basically protracting and retracting. And you're trying to kind of wrap your shoulder blades around the ribs as you're doing it to get this muscle working. Okay. This is pretty much all it does, is just protraction and retraction. Now, when you have a winging shoulder blade or winging scapula, it means that the medial edge of the shoulder blade, the scapula, and the inferior part of the scapula are often kind of winging off or floating off the rib cage. And that's a big sign of weakness of the serratus anterior and the lower trapezius together. So if I put the lower trapezius in, just come up here, the search function, if I put in lower trapezius, move my ugly skull out of the way. Okay, so just put the whole traps in. So this fiber here is the lower traps. So if we do a quick motion on that one there, on the lower trapezius. Okay, so that's retraction there for the traps. And then serratus anterior is doing protraction. So lower trap and serratus anterior agonist antagonist muscles. Now, but also because the lower trap's depressing the shoulder blade down, if it's weak, what will happen is that let's get rid of the fade. This lower angle here will float up. So, and then also what can happen is if you get really tight lats, the lats will basically pin the glenohumeral joint down onto the ribs, and then this will kind of spin out and kind of like lift off the rib cage itself as well, because the lower traps and the rhomboids aren't kind of pulling the shoulder blade back. So we have this kind of interaction between the trapezius and the serratus anterior as those scapular stabilizers. Really, really important kind of dual role there. Let's get rid of this bad boy. Okay. So something to really keep in mind. Now, if you put the latissimus dorsi back in here, so latissimus, helps if you spell it right. There it is. So the latissimus dorsi kind of like, because it covers the lower inferior angle, kind of helps kind of keep it in position so it stops winging out. But it can also help with that kind of depression. If you go back and look at the latissimus dorsi video we did, the lats help in retraction and depression, okay? Whereas serratus anterior are protracting muscles. So we want those two to be really strong, so we're in good balance, so we don't have a winging shoulder blade at all. The other muscle to kind of really take into consideration here is pec major. If that pops up, I really need to learn how to type properly. Okay, pec major here. Okay, so we've got pec major, which is your big pressing muscle. So if we go to horizontal abduction, shoulder pressure, major flexion, let's have a look at this one. Shoulder abduction, that's flexion, medial rotation, transverse abduction. There we go. So that's your fly. So that's basically opening up into a crucifix position and coming back down. Now, it's not shown there, but here, that's basically your push-up position there, right, or your plank position. If you were to press into your arms, if you were to press down that way, okay, your serratus anterior is going to wrap that shoulder blade around the rib cage into protraction. So when you do a push-up, you come up into neutral, and then a push-up plus is then you want to press into the arms of the elbow straight to get that shoulder blade protraction. Then you'll get a nice spread between the shoulder blades here. So the rhomboids and the medial trap will kind of open up. You get a nice stretch with all the kind of the mid-thoracic extensors through there. And then also what will happen is if you tuck your tailbone into a little pelvic tilt, you'll get a nice anterior kind of core engagement, so that brace, and then that'll create a little bit of flexion through the spine. So you have what's called a holiday or a rounder position through the spine, and that just optimally places this shoulder blade to wrap around the rib cage. So it's a really, really good practice or movement to train, is to kind of get into this push-up position or a plank position. Okay, do your push-up or do your plank, and then at top you press into the hands and get that shoulder blade spread, and that really helps get that serratus anterior going. Again, it's not a muscle you're going to be able to see when you're training, but when you train it, because it's so big, I mean, if you just go back, look at, okay, now he's going to get a spaz out. The size of serratus anterior is essentially the size of your hand, okay, wrapping on when you spread your fingers out, probably even bigger than that, almost as big as the pec major. So it kind of like, it balances out the pec major a lot, because the pec major is going to be pulling on your humerus to bring it in this direction, okay, all right, and then at the same time the serratus anterior is pulling from the back, so they kind of pull in the same direction together, and so it makes it for a stronger contraction. That's why it's the punching muscle. And then you've got the lats and the traps and the rhomboids who are pulling it in the opposite direction as well. So we want that balance between the two. So basically what you want to do is you want to be able to press. So you want to be able to do push-ups, and you want to be able to do rows, okay, in the horizontal plane. Okay, and then you also want to be able to do press overhead and pull down. Okay, so to get the shoulder, so you get the lats, you get the traps, the deltoids firing, to have a really healthy shoulder. So you want to be able to go this way, and this way. And then get the depression down, you also want to be able to push down, which is more of a dip type movement. So there are really 4 key kind of global patterns in movement you want to train in the upper body. So you push, pull, press, pull down, that's 4. And then a dip is probably 5. And people just train those patterns and then select exercises which train those patterns. People get a little bit caught up on specific exercises, whereas the actual global movement pattern is probably more important. So it doesn't really matter if you're doing a bench press or a dumbbell bench press or a dumbbell A press or a barbell press or a push up or a tricep push up. It's all training essentially the same pattern. Sure, the different angles will get different muscle activation at that level, but really you just want to get good at the broad level pattern first. And so a big mistake I see people make is in rehab particularly, they go really specific really quickly. So they're trying to like isolate like a head of the bicep or something like that. Whereas like it's really, really difficult to actually isolate a head of the bicep because it shares a common tendon. Whereas if you just train the movement pattern to its full range with good posture and good technique, and then just apply basic soft tissue manual therapy work to get rid of any adhesions and any knots and any restrictions and myofascial trigger points and all those kind of things that stop the muscles from contracting and relaxing. Restore muscle balance, particularly more from an agonist antagonist perspective. So, for example, if the pec major on the front was really tight, neurologically, that's going to inhibit the rhomboids and the middle and lower trap on the back. And so that'll feed into more tightness on the chest on the front. Then you get that kind of rolling, rounding shoulders. Okay, then you get pec minor getting tight. Then you get the lats getting tight, and it just kind of feeds into this pattern. So at a high level, when you kind of break down movement and then you put it back together again, and you look at movement patterns, you can pick up dysfunctional movement really quickly in assessment. So instead of trying to, for example, assess the 17 shoulders across the shoulder joint, if you watch people do exercise or movement and watch very closely, you can kind of see where the dysfunction is coming out, and then you can kind of work on training that movement pattern. And then, of course, you want to assess the movement in the joint as well to rule out anything nasty. But mostly 80% of rehab, I would say, is just retraining the movement pattern, getting good bounce back. Okay, allowing the tissue structures to heal properly. Okay, so stop doing the things that are creating the problem. That's really helpful. And then the body has this really amazing capacity to heal itself if you set it up to do so. And so that's what we do. And then we just train and layer in with good exercise prescriptions, starting off really simple, cover the basics, get your foundations. We want strength, we want mobility, we want stability, and we want flexibility. We want that combination of all four. And we want patience and persistence to be able to develop and train the system to get to a point where you can move pain-free, full range. So then you can go and then do the different things you want to do. So we put into another hierarchy. So medical issue first, then function, like retrain the function of the body, then fitness. Okay, so then you go and go and do CrossFit or a strength class or whatever, and then performance. So, higher level stuff if you really want to take it that far. But what happens is people get injured and they go from being injured to fitness and they don't retrain function first, and they keep going back into the injury cycle. All right. So must train function first. So I pretty much work within that functional space. From medical, people come to me, I help them restore function, get them back to a point where they can get back into their fitness journey or back into their work role. And then from there, I hand over to their personal trainer or their coach or whoever, or their own coach. Or some clients I then take on the coaching role, and we keep coaching forward and taking them to some pretty cool stuff. But personally, for me to work with someone full time like that, they need to be really dedicated and they just need to do what I ask them to do. And which is not many people, which is why I don't take on many full-time clients. I've got 5 at the moment who are really dedicated and they're doing amazing things. And I have a whole list of clients I work with just at different levels as well. But at the higher level, the functional level, once people have gone through medical, functional, we get them fit, and then we perform. So the 5 I'm talking about are performers. They're in their different levels in careers and work, and they're all performing at really high levels. And I take on their kind of health and wellness coaching kind of role with that, which is really cool. We can talk about in another video coming down the track. But you got to get the body right first. Like you got to get the movement piece right. Why? Because when you get the movement piece right, you eliminate a lot of pain, a lot of aches, a lot of niggles, a lot of discomfort. And those things stop people. They're big barriers. Like if you've got back pain or shoulder pain or Achilles tendonitis, it just stops you doing things. It takes a lot of mental energy away from what you're doing in your real day or your work day or your fitness and health and wellness. And then you can then fine tune your engine. You can't fine tune your machine, your body, your mind, your spirit. So then we always got to sort out the physical piece first. And then the physical piece is really good because it's tangible. You can feel it. We have a lot of somatic feedback coming from the body to the brain. So you get a lot of rich feedback. And then if people want to go into the next level, then we look at breathing properly, how to train breathing mechanisms. Currently doing a PhD in breathing stuff, which is super cool. So I'm doing a series of videos on that in the future. Stay tuned for that. Once you can breathe well, then we start coaching people on how to use their mind properly. So mental skills, concentration and focus being the key one. If you can't concentrate and focus on a task, then you can't do the task very well, right? So learning how to concentrate and focus is really critical. Then once we learn how to kind of anchor your mind so you can use your mind to do work, whatever that work is, then we look into bioenergetics, so how to build up your energy or your chi in Chinese medicine. And then from there, we look at your Shen or your spirit level. It's like, what do you want to do with this life you have? What's your purpose? What's your passion? What are you here for? What lights your fire? What makes you happy? How do we kind of support you in doing that if you're already doing that, or how can we help direct you to find that purpose and passion and happiness that you want to do? So that's kind of what I do a lot of, and it starts with movement. It starts with getting the body right first, and that's why we want to learn functional anatomy. Anyway, so that was a little bit of a side tangent onto me and how I work. If you're liking the video, if you're liking what I'm doing, please give me a like, give me a share, get stuck in the Serratus Anterior, do your push-ups, bench presses, do the scapular spread, get that happening. You will thank me. Just if you just YouTube like Serratus Anterior pressing, stuff like that, you'll come across heaps of videos on YouTube about that. Grab 3D for medical if you want to keep studying anatomy. You can follow along. And if you have any questions, drop them down in the comments below, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers, guys.